go
have
ahead.
something. You have something to show us, Rubber Fingers.
I
Hello, Chad.
do.
Hello, everyone out there. We hope if you're listening that you'll continue to listen for a few more minutes, but
Yes.
at least.
We have a lot to talk about today. News. There were a lot of articles written. Honestly, people are starting to talk about this, I think, more and more just in the last couple months. I've been seeing way more um, articles in my Google alert written
It can't
about.
be us. It's
I
not
don't
us.
think it's necessarily us yet. I think we are. I think we're going to start riding this wave soon because people are waking up to the fact that
No,
Article
I just
5 is a
want to be
thing.
the energy behind the force that I can shove on their asses to do this stuff to get done.
Exactly.
Okay? I'm saying it right now. I don't want no credit. I want you guys to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
All you that are busy hubbubbing about it today, and I mean, like this
Mm-hmm.
convention of states and that guy who wrote that that's now pushing the other constitutional scholar, right? So go ahead with what you got. Go for it.
Okay.
Right.
So I have been working on and I made a timeline of the proposed and ratified amendments. So if I pull it up on screen now, we have it here. Um, okay. Ooh, I wish I could get rid of this sheet page. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So are you looking at the screen now also, PC? Are,
I am.
are you seeing this timeline? Because you haven't seen this yet, I believe, right?
I have not. I'm. I I may need it to be bigger for me because I'm older and my eyes.
Okay.
Even though I have my glasses on, I'm okay. Because this is like, whoa, this gets kind of.
Yeah.
So is the okay? So e-plane it to me.
Okay. So
That's
what
because
we
I'm
have
not using
here,
Nexus.
yeah, going up and down, going along the rows here, uh, the rows top to bottom are labeled 1 through 27 for the 27 amendments. And in here are a few of these unratified
They're,
ones that don't have numbers, they have the names. There's 6 of those
they're
unratified.
right that are proposed, and one has all two have been sunsetted. They were
Yes.
written with a sunset in them, and you have to do that. You can't do it after. The a proposed amendment that has come out of Congress cannot be changed in any form.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then going across the top, left to right, running the length of the spreadsheet here are the years, starting in 1787 when the Constitution was proposed and ratified. Nothing happened for 2 years. We can see that here. Then in 1789, we have the first 10. That's this big block of blue right here.
well, we have the first 10. We have the first 10 ratified, but
Yes.
do we not have 12 proposed?
We
No,
have
not.
We do. We have 12 proposed because, as you notice down here, so this one, the CA. Okay, so we have the first 10 here. That is the Bill of Rights that were all proposed and ratified. We also have the CAA, which is the Congressional Apportionment Amendment that was never ratified. That's why it's hollow. That's why this is just an outline. It has not been ratified, but it
It
goes
has not
on.
been ratified, but it has passed Congress.
It has passed
The two-thirds of,
Congress
and it has been ratified by some states,
by
maybe
some,
we think.
yes, but not 3/4.
Not the amount we need.
Yes,
Correct
and
amendment.
also down here we see the 27th Amendment. So this is kind of a spoiler. The fact that it's already the line is already filled in. We know at some point it's going to get ratified, but we're going to keep an eye on that line and see how long it gets before it is completed when it was ratified. So this is the timeline. And the main purpose of illustrating this is so that we can see these gaps. Like right here, this is a big gap of whatever that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Nothing happened. No amendments ratified. There's a little gap here, 2 years, etc. So,
And not just ratified, as far as we know, none
or
proposed.
proposed. Yes, correct.
Okay, we want to make that clear too when we're
Yes.
talking.
So this is
It
just
is.
all the action of
We realize it's complicated.
proposing and ratification is illustrated by the starting and stopping of a line. So again, the first 10 proposed in 1789, and they were all ratified as a group in 1791. And these are just years because we're looking at, over 200 and almost 250 years of history. So I just go by year. I'm not breaking it up into months because some of them take less than a year. Some of them, take 2 years and a month. They get basically rounded up to 3 years if they cross a year. So, anyways, yeah, the CAA, the Congressional Apportionment Amendment, that's an important one because that is still pending ratification. That would make it so that each representative in the House of Representatives, their district would be made up of 50,000 people. So if we were to ratify that today, that would basically make each that would increase the number of seats in the House of Representatives to like in the thousands. We would have a lot of
Or become like a cage fight.
it would
Man, and the
yeah,
House of Representatives just becomes
battle royale.
unending. Yeah. Wow.
It would make
I'm
it
ready.
much bigger. Okay. So then 2 years nothing happens. 1794, that's when the 11th Amendment was proposed, and it only took until the next year, 1795, for it to be ratified. Now, should we pause here and look at the 11th Amendment? Do you want to just read it if you've got your Constitution still with you?
I would like to because I
Okay.
think it's a very interesting amendment
Okay.
compared to the first 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And it has to do with something that is kind of actually seems to be quite current
Mm-hmm.
in the news this week. And just let me get there. I'm sorry. I
That's
wasn't late for. Oh, I'm at it.
Yeah, I surprised you with that
Oh,
one.
we're doing amendments, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one is the judicial power. And you know what that is at this time in the United States. There's only one judicial power, really, in the United States at that time. You know what I'm talking about? SCOTUS?
Supreme Court. Yep.
It really is only the Supreme Court. So it's not anything. So the Supreme Court of the United States shall not be constructed to extend any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Did you kind of get this?
Right. So no lawsuits against states. States cannot be
Well,
sued, basically, right?
pretty much because, yes. And the reason why this became an amendment was because the Supreme Court gave a ruling that was opposite to this. Because a citizen of the United States, we'll say of the United States, although there really weren't any at that time, but you know what I mean, sort of a person that had been living in the United States during the Revolutionary War
Mm-hmm.
had been promised money from the government, from whatever government there was in the United States at that time.
Okay.
And for, selling their stuff, their wares to the, or having them confiscated, whatever it was, by the military,
Mm.
by the American military. So that suit was brought, and the Supreme Court said yes, a citizen has a right to ask a state to pay them. And then the state said, no, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So they just made Congress make an amendment that said, no, you don't.
Yep.
No, you don't. Not
Okay.
unless we think so. Not unless we let you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you can if we let you, but no. But I just think that's sort of an interesting one after the Bill of Rights,
Yeah.
in such contrast to the Bill of
Mm-hmm.
Rights.
Yeah. It
And so
limits people's rights rather than limiting the government's right to uh, pass laws or infringe on people's rights. It limits people's ability to sue the states, basically.
when they've been wronged, but when
Right.
they have no other, recourse.
It's kind of like
So anyway,
qualified immunity for the states, basically.
kinda, kinda. And that's why they can get away with doing so much of
Hmm.
sort of what they do.
Okay.
And it's an interesting thing because look at what happened between those years. Something happened between when the Bill of Rights got ratified and when the 11th sort of got done. That was the
Hmm.
time, George Mason died in that.
Hmm.
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 Maybe that was a coincidence.
Good point. Interesting. Well, okay. So
Anyway,
moving on there from 1795 to 1803, nothing happened, right? Uh, and that would be the 12th Amendment in 1803. Uh, the 12th. I mean, I don't know if we have to. Are we going to outline each of the amendments? Because I'll be honest, I don't know what the 12th Amendment is right off the bat.
no, not right now.
Yeah.
We can go back and do them. I just thought that
Yeah.
the 11th is an interesting
Right.
one, and the 12th could be just sort of as bad. You know what I mean? I don't, I don't know.
Well, let's at
We got
least.
enough sort of stuff like that. What, you want me to tell you what it's
Yeah, just
supposed to
say
be
the
on?
name. Just tell us the name. We don't need to go in detail.
I don't know that I have that in my book. They only,
Oh.
I think, give me the number. I told you that, and or I'd let you know that before. And it is sort of, maybe not. It just
Okay.
tells me when it was like properly proposed and ratified, which is sort of interesting. The election shall meet in their the electors shall meet in their respective states.
Oh, right. That's the uh,
Electoral college
electoral
bullshit,
college one.
or
Right. Yeah. Election of
okay,
presidents. It's about election of presidents. Okay. It's just
something, a
outlining
whole lot of.
more details of how things get run. Okay. Then we've got
And
another
then
little gap here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Nothing happens. And then we have the introduction of the titles of nobility. See, I labeled that TON, titles of nobility. That amendment says that if anyone in the United States is granted a title of nobility by a foreign country, then they are no longer a citizen of the United States. There's a part in the Constitution that says the United States will grant no titles of nobility, and this would sort of add on to that part. It sort of buffs up that part of the Constitution, but it was never ratified, and it is still currently sitting on the books. It could be ratified today, although I don't know, titles of nobility don't really mean as much anymore, so I don't think it would really matter if people were given a title of nobility. It doesn't really mean much, but
no, I don't want anybody to be king.
then so yeah, so I kind of color coded these amendments. These first three, or the first 10, and then these two are sort of in blue, and that's because they're sort of grouped together as like the post-revolution amendments. But then after that titles of nobility one was proposed and not ratified. A whole lot of nothing here. We got a lot of blank space.
You know what
Nothing
the next? I mean, I know
happens
you and I know what's coming up, but
until this one here, the Corwin Amendment, is proposed. And the Corwin Amendment was intended to head off the Civil War. This is in 1861, a couple years, or like right before the Civil War started. Uh, they it
we'll
was
just so it was
mhm,
proposed then to stop to, but
to
it
try and
didn't. But it
stop the
didn't.
Civil War.
So we'll just right.
Exactly.
But it didn't. So we'll just move on
But
because it didn't.
it is still
It's still
pending ratification, although it would be complicated and it would cause a constitutional crisis if it was ratified because it was set up to not to stop abolition basically. But then these next three in 1865 to 1870, sort of in green, bluish green, those are the Civil War amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, abolition of slaves, the 14th, which is all about citizenship and like rights of people to be called Americans, and the 15th is more sort of citizenship and like about slavery and stuff.
yes.
And
I book it down.
huh?
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So that was another little chunk. We had action was occurring there at least for that little short period of time. But then look, another big long gap. Nothing happens for whatever this from 1871 to 1909. So whatever that is, like 38 years or 37 years, I guess. Then these are in green, sort of another little cluster. We had four, the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, which are just sort of
Well, some of
various.
those are. That's the prohibition, right?
Uh,
Prohibition's in there.
yes, that
Yeah.
includes the prohibition one. Let's see. That is the
This article, and then
oh
the rights of the citizens to vote shall not be denied or abridged.
well actually okay wait that was the 15th.
Oh,
The
that's the.
15th is the rights of citizens to vote. I was wrong about that. It's the right to vote. Then the
Oh
16th
no,
is
no,
the
no. We're in the wrong one. No, 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 no. I'm wrong.
yeah.
Just a minute.
So then the
No,
16th,
the rights of citizens of the United States to vote. Yes, that's that one.
that's the
That's the
15th.
15th. The
Yes.
16th is the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on income.
Yes. Income tax. Now that I find that one to be very interesting and I'd like to learn more about that, and I want to know why was that ratified? Why did three-fourths of the states say, yeah, federal income tax? That sounds like a great idea. And stop, and get rid of that apportionment uh, clause in the Constitution because it was supposed to be apportioned. Any tax by the federal government was supposed to be apportioned based on the census. But, anyways, that got rid of that. And then the next one, the 17th, we know about the 17th. That's the one that was almost a states amendment convention because the states were demanding that senators be directly elected by the people. And it's interesting that came after the federal income tax one. I wonder if people were feeling like they weren't getting good representation.
Well, they weren't because, of course, the senators were going to be paid by that income.
Oh, right. So, not too
So they
long.
figured out a way to get some money for their salaries.
So not too long after that federal income tax, people demanded direct election of senators, and within 2 years, it was ratified and it was proposed and ratified.
And ratified.
Yes,
Although there had been a fight going on before that, I'm sure long before that.
probably. Yeah.
That's why it was coming to a sort of a head with the call for the
Good.
convention
Yeah. Good point. Good
of
point.
an
The
amendment.
yeah.
Okay.
That was yeah. So the states were proposing a convention all along, leading up to the amendment being proposed by Congress in 1912.
And this is a very socialism time in America as well. Let me tell you, from the 1900s to 19 like 13.
Hmm.
Socialism and communism and revolutions were happening all over the world.
Hmm.
So we may have been isolated, but we weren't that isolated. Okay?
Right.
We knew what was going on, and it, we were a little scared, a little scared, but it was. Um, that's when this is all happening too. So it's sort of a thing of where a lot is happening in the world, like automobiles are coming into really their own, and people are even doing airplanes by
Hmm.
this time. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, then a couple years pass, and then 1917, the 18th
Now this
Amendment,
is the
that's the prohibition of alcohol right there.
okay.
Hmm. And yeah, it took 3 years from being proposed to being ratified. Then next you have the 19th, which is the women's suffrage. Uh,
Which comes at a time when people can't drink.
uh-huh.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about
It's
that. I have
interesting.
lots to say about that. Yes. Okay,
Hmm.
go ahead. Go ahead. This
Okay.
is good.
Then a few years pass, and then we have this is the
When your
wait.
term of the president and the vice president ends, they say when it does. The 20th? Are we
That's
on
the
the
20th, but
20th?
that's not yet. First, I have this one, which
Oh,
is
I'm sorry.
not ratified, and that is wait. Oh no, no, I'm forgetting what that one was. The CLA. Hang on, let me pull up my. Oh, child labor. That's what it is. Yeah, child labor. The child labor amendment that was never ratified. Laws, started getting passed on their own anyways, so no enough states never ratified it, but it was proposed and it is still active. It could still be ratified if we thought we needed it, I suppose. Okay, then we have the 20th, and that is the commencement of the terms of president, vice president, and members of Congress. It just sets out like the dates that they take place and stuff. Then we have the repeal of the 18th Amendment with the 21st Amendment, which repealed prohibition. Then another sort of gap here. I still have these in yellow because I still consider this like an era of amendments here. In 1947 is introduced the 22nd Amendment, which is presidential tenure. I guess that's the term limits, no more than 2 terms for president.
For the president. For the
Hmm.
president. Only for the president.
Right, because that's right after World War II, and it was, because of FDR having his extra term, they felt the need to make enshrine term limits in the Constitution, and that took 5 years from being proposed to being ratified in 1951. Okay, then there's
Mm.
another little gap, which leads us. So from, let's see, 8 years to the 1960s. 1960, we have the 23rd, then shortly followed by 24th and 25th. They're all in fairly quick succession. These are kind of like the civil rights amendments.
Some, well, yeah, go ahead. What did you call them? The what rights
Civil rights
amendment?
amendments, right? The 60s.
Well, this is when the District of Columbia actually gets that's when it gets
Right. 23rd is
some
presidential
representation.
electors for the District of Columbia. The 24th
Yes.
is the abolition of the poll tax, so no more poll taxes in federal elections.
Hmm. Or other
Uh,
tax too, as well. Just
mhm.
and that Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
Right. That's kind of
That's
the
also
that
part
kind
of
of
it.
goes at the end of all the amendments, right? Several, if Congress is going to
It
have to
probably
enforce it.
does, but it
Yeah.
goes on that one because
Hmm.
it is important. Okay.
Then the
And then in
25th.
case of the removal from the president,
Yep.
vice president. So
It's
then
like
they,
the
the
succession of power.
secession,
Hmm.
yes, secession of power.
Yep, from vice president to speaker, etc. Okay, then the 26th, which is that's the shortest amendment. It took less than a year. It took actually
To be
100 days
ratified.
to be ratified.
To be ratified.
That is the uh, voting age being lowered to 18. So I guess that's during the Vietnam War, correct? 1971 was
Yes, and we'd actually
mhm,
been there. I mean, they've been doing the draft easily since I think 64, but
mhm,
basically since we've been basically drafting for 10 years and they couldn't even vote.
mhm. So
18. And that was basically kind of the slogan. If I'm old enough to die, am I old enough to vote?
and so that in a way that was the last amendment that was
Yep,
proposed. That's the last amendment to be proposed and ratified
that
because
was
it
50
was the
years.
fastest. It took 100 days exactly from being proposed by Congress to being ratified by three-fourths of the states for 18-year-olds to be able to vote. Obviously the Vietnam War was this huge issue, and I'm guessing people thought, well, this changes a lot. You know,
Was
now
a huge issue. The draft,
now
like we're
mhm,
still in a war in Afghanistan, and
right.
it's not a huge issue.
We don't
So
feel
it
it
was the
because of the
draft,
draft. Exactly.
right? And that was it. That's what they said. If I'm old enough to be drafted,
I'm old enough to vote.
then aren't I old enough to vote? That's right. And
And
you got your draft date when you were 18, and you got drafted when you were 19.
right.
So some of them towards the end didn't go quite as much, but and they were dying, and people knew we were making no progress. Just like what the hell happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it's like I could have just deja vued 20
Hmm.
years of my life, right? Wasn't it except for the draft? What's the difference? And they made the draft. I mean, they made a draft, but they made it not on the surface. They made it underneath. I mean, like
Right. It's
they
just
made it economic, and an
exactly.
economic, yes,
Yep.
draft,
It's yeah.
because they
It's
found
basically a
out what
jobs
happens.
program. So
Yep.
now, I guess people thought, well, that fixed all our problems, and now young people can vote. So we don't need to ratify any more amendments. Okay, so they proposed two more amendments, sort of in that era, but they were not ratified. So that's the next one to be proposed was
The
the ERA.
ERA,
Mm-hmm.
Equal Rights
Equal
Amendment.
Rights Amendment, and that one
Oh, women
it's
don't need that. Women don't need an equal rights. Well, who says they're not equal?
and
Don't get me started.
that one had a sunset date of 1979, and they were very close to getting it ratified, but not quite. So uh, they passed they passed an extension, giving it an extra 3 years. But during that 3 years, that's when Phyllis Schlafly and those conservative women showed up and sort of rallied and got a bunch of
And
states
that's
to
why they did it.
rescind
That's why
their.
they put the sunset date on it like that
Mhm,
too. Look at do any of the others have sunset dates? No. When do things start happening? Is when it gets the most radical,
mhm,
when we move the most progressive,
mhm,
when things are clicking, when we realize that people need rights. 18-year-olds, if they're going to go to war to die, they need to have the right to vote about
mhm,
who's sending them to that war. Okay? And that's what that fight was about. And then the women are saying, look, I'm not being treated fairly. I don't get credit. I have to pay more for a house interest loan. I can't get a credit card. I can't get, I mean, let me go down the list. I got to be married. What the hell? You got to be married. We're talking 1971. We ain't talking 19 fucking 20.
mhm.
We're talking, 50 years after that. So then that's what I'm saying. They wanted to hurry it through because they knew that, like, once this backlash that they could come up with, the conservatives or whoever does not want any progress to be made for people to get their rights, because then things will change.
Mhm.
More socialism will happen, more communism could happen.
Which is why
Anyway,
we should
yes.
start the hashtag no sunset dates. No sunset dates on any proposed amendment. Just
And what's the last one?
give it
And
time to
what's the
breathe.
last
Okay,
one?
the last one to be proposed was DC Voting Rights Amendment. So that's more voting rights for District of Columbia, for them to have actual representation. Uh, it wouldn't have been statehood, but it would have been representation, and that also sunsetted. It just never really took off, to be honest.
Well,
Uh,
you didn't, because they made no, it was not really, this is the time where the media is probably to somewhat changing, not these years exactly, but what's happening is that you think Washington, D.C., so you're thinking, well, they're all Congress people. And even then, it was not really reported of what a high ratio of how they sort of made a certain color of people live in a certain, and that would be Washington, D.C., and not in the nice parts of Washington.
right.
And it took me much later after those years to actually find that. So a lot of people were not allowed to, they just weren't informed, and we didn't have the internet. It wasn't really talked about.
Right.
It wasn't written a lot about. There was this big disparity about, there were a lot of people that were not getting representation and who they were. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And how they were sort of trying to make sure that they couldn't have representation. And just another denial, and just another part of systemic racism. There you go.
Yes.
You said
Okay.
it.
So, uh, then, so that was sort of the end. Like, those are grouped up into like the 1960s and sort of beyond amendments that was sort of the end of the golden age. If you look back, it was really from uh, 1909 to 1971 were like the most amendments were just happening pretty rapid fire. There was sort of some gaps in there, but it never got like forgotten about, like it has been now. So then there's a gap, nothing was passed, and then we have in 1992 uh, Gregory Watson, who I am more and more thinking of as a hero and a modern day founder. Uh, he or framer. He started that movement to pass the 27th Amendment, which stopped Congress and the Senate from giving themselves pay raises until an election had transpired. But again, that 27th Amendment goes all the way back to the beginning on that timeline, 202 years. That's a long line, but it is filled in. It was finally completed. Uh, and then after that, nothing happened. And that's been so really when you look at 1971, which was the last amendment to be proposed and ratified, that's 50 years till today. 50 years of no new amendments being proposed and ratified.
Well, they're not
Yeah,
making it out of Congress. For 50 years, we have
right.
not made anything out of Congress. So that tells you that Congress has been broken for 50 years.
Well,
That
I
is
mean,
their job.
the
I
Equal
mean,
Rights
well,
Amendment,
something's brought it.
the Equal Rights
Well,
Amendment
yeah,
and the DC Voting Rights Amendment made it out of Congress, but they didn't get ratified.
right. I shouldn't say that.
Right,
But I'm saying, but they aren't that long after 1971. I
right.
mean, it's not like, I mean,
Yeah.
so what, 48
So
years?
yeah, 78 was
45 years?
when
I mean,
the last one was proposed. So actually, you could really look at it as 78. So what would that be? That would be from 80, 90, 2000. That would be
just a minute.
40. That'd be 41 or 42 years.
When
It's
was
been
it? 1978, you said? Yes.
uh,
43.
yeah, 78. So 43 years since an
When we
amendment has
did it.
been even proposed. So that's a big gap. That's the longest gap of anything being proposed. We still have these four sitting here unratified. We could push for, I think, the only one that really makes sense to push for, today that would actually have an impact on our current political system would be the Congressional Apportionment Amendment, which currently has, I believe, 11 states ratified it. So it would need another 20
7,
right
27.
27 to ratify. Uh, or we need another one to be proposed. Either Congress needs to step up or the states need to step up and propose something because we have a
Well,
big
they
gap.
did propose, but it hasn't actually made it out of Congress either. So we're not at any ratification on that one either, right? The one that
Well, yeah, I
you
mean, by proposed, I mean make it out of Congress.
Congress. Okay,
Not,
yeah, we
yeah,
haven't.
introduced would be just being introduced in Congress by
Okay,
a single or a group
uh,
of legislators, but not actually passed by the 2/3 needed to propose it to the states. So that's the point. There's this huge gap here. And when we kind of zoom out and look at the whole timeline, which doesn't even really, it barely fits all on one screen. Uh, let's see. Actually, I may have been wrong. Let's see. How many years was this gap? That was 1871 to 1908.
you kind of
Eight,
cut out on
oh, sorry. I was leaning for
18.
1871 to 1908. That's 40. Quick maths.
And that
70, 80, 90. That's 38 years or something like that. It's not quite as big of a gap as the modern day gap of whatever we said.
well, and we have nothing. We don't know what was going on back then. What were those? Those would have been the ones.
Yeah,
Was
that
that
would
the
have.
senator one? So there was like things were still popping in and happening, right? Isn't the
Right.
senator one somewhere in there or something like that, or coming to it? So people are pushing during that. What's being pushed right now? Hardly anything at all. And okay, the convention of states is pushing that. Well, they don't know what they're pushing. I mean, they're trying to push two things in one convention, and it ain't going to work. You've got to pick your poison. I mean, and they all say that. I mean, I'm not the one saying it when I say pick your poison. I'm saying you got to pick your pony in the sense of you cannot try to straddle two horses. Okay, it isn't going to work. You got to pick the horse you're going to ride. Is the horse going to be term limits or is it going to be a balanced budget? You can't
Mm-hmm.
have term limits and a balanced budget at the same convention. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? I'm looking here. Okay, there was a longer gap. This long gap from 1810 to 1861, nothing was proposed, and then nothing was ratified until 1865. But that's after the
Yeah,
Civil War. So really the last time we had a huge gap in amendments like this, that was right before the
we
Civil
were
War.
moving to a
We
civil
were
war.
moving right up to a Civil War. And look at us
And we're
today.
getting pretty close there.
Look
And you got to
at
realize that we're
today. We're definitely headed towards another Civil War. If it's not a hot Civil War, we're definitely already in a cold Civil War, you know. Or maybe it's already hot at this point too. I don't know.
I mean, it's a civil war in a fight over what are the true facts. What are the facts? What
right.
are the facts? And sort of, if you believe that Christianity gives you fact, then that in and of itself, or if your religion gives you facts, I mean, facts you can, point to, facts you can like everyone can agree on 2 plus 2. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying just elemental as that, elementary as that, whatever you
Right.
want to say. It's like that. It's like that. And when you are going to say, I'm not going to go with the science, I'm only going to go with religion, anytime that you get this fanatical religious type of surging in a population, it is there's going to be like a civil war because people are broken over that, especially in the sense of where that in America, supposedly we're supposed to have a separation of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that actually is sort of like in the Constitution.
Mm.
I'm just saying that that is in the Constitution.
Well, thank you for watching that timeline with me. I know it was a lot of boring looking at a graph
I
sheet,
don't
but
think that it is boring because really that is
I
the
should
real history of America. What else is there? There's the
visually
Constitution and how we've what?
visually not very exciting, but no, it is interesting history, I
Well,
think.
I think visually it actually is really good because it gives you an idea of what the fuck is actually going on right before your eyes.
Right. Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you.